Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing our series on ancient Greece. Last time we left off talking about Alexander the Great and his life and his growing up. And now we are continuing. His father was just killed at a wedding feast, and now he's 20 years old with the role of being the king of this huge land. Ancient Greece is under his control. Macedonia is under his control. And so now he has his eyes on Persia, trying to fulfill his father's dreams and to, basically make his father, proud and his family proud. And he's full of this ambition, and so he starts by trying to go to amass an army of Greeks to lead them into Persia. And so then he goes to Thebes, where he kind of just, he's going into Greece. And basically what happens is that they lead a revolt against Alexander the Great, but that doesn't succeed very well because Alexander and his Macedonian army, they lay Thebes to the ground, and then they basically take the survivors and they either kill them or they just sell them into slavery. And so then he goes to Corinth, and they see what happens at Thebes, and so there's a lot of fear about Alexander, but also a great amount of admiration. And so then he is elected the general to lead Greece into Persia. And so then Alexander the Great lets the Persian king know that he's after the throne, so, he better be ready. And then he starts out with this campaign against Persia in a very, what the Greeks would call a poetic way. He goes to the ancient city of Troy, where the ancient poem, the Iliad, takes place, and he dedicates his armor to Athena. He then puts a wreath on the tomb of Achilles, and then he goes to Gordia, where he undoes the impossible Gordian knot with the sword. You're supposed to untie it, but he just does it with the sword, and it's said that whoever cuts this knot is destined to be the king of the world. So then he does that, as a sign that he is going to conquer the world. And so what happens after that is that he enters into Persia and the Mediterranean area, and he's having a great time. He's easily conquering any army that stands in his way, and he sees that as a sign of the god's favor. So eventually they take all of the Mediterranean part of Persia. So all the Mediterranean is now under Alexander's control and no longer under Persian control. And so then it's time to face Darius III's armies, and they fight in this Persian city called Issus. And the strategy that Alexander and his armies used was to use the soldier formation of the phalanx. Basically, it's basically 8 deep, and shields around, basically an impenetrable wall of soldiers with force just constantly moving. And so they're just slicing through these armies like jelly, and it becomes no problem. And so the Persian armies basically, left destroyed, and so then Darius flees. And so then Alexander takes a break from Persia and goes down to Egypt, where they name him Pharaoh, and then he founds a city named after him called the city of Alexandria, and it's still here to this day, and Alexander even designed the city himself with the temples and the marketplace and things like that. And so now he's back, he's focusing on the Persians, and there's this great battle that takes place at Gaugamela, and there's Darius III's there, and then he has 45,000 cavalry and 200,000 infantrymen. And so once again the Persians don't succeed. No matter what they do, Alexander the Great and his armies always win. And so after that, Darius basically flees, and then Alexander and his army continue to take over major Persian cities, always on the hunt for Darius. And then eventually Alexander hears the news that Darius has died. He was killed by his own men. And so now he finally has his dreams, and Alexander is the king of Persia. Okay, so now Alexander has enjoyed his time as king of Persia, and now he has a bigger ambition and focus of conquering the whole world. And so he continues to travel east, and so what he does is he subdues, there are these barbarians in Iran that he takes over, and so that's taken care of. And he even went all the way to China's borders, and it's kind of funny, he founded a city there called Alexandria the Farthest. And then he goes down south from there to India, and he's traveling through India. And then the big conflict in India, it's quite a lot to travel, is there's King Porus and his 200 war elephants. And Alexander once again clears it, and he easily defeats him. Their strategy was to basically drive the elephants mad with a bunch of spear wounds, so that way they go insane and couldn't be controlled and fight in the battle. So just taking out the power that the Indian army had. And so now that is done, and he's like almost through India. He has 3 months to go, but then his men all of a sudden refuse to follow him because they've been gone away from home so long, because this was an 8-year campaign. And so they say that we need to turn back and we need to go back to our homeland. So Alexander waits 3 days, hoping that they would change their mind, but they do not. And so then he basically just relents. And so on their way back, they come across this fort, and Alexander says that they need to take it over. And during that conflict, Alexander gets brutally wounded by an arrow. And then, even though wounded, he continues to lead his armies. And then they make it to Babylon by the Arabian Sea, where Alexander dies at the age of 32. And so Alexander is dead. There's no heir to the throne. And so then his kingdom is divided into 5. So you have Macedon and Greece, which is 1. Egypt, including the Holy Land. Then you have Syria together with Persia, and then 2 less significant ones in Asia Minor. And a really interesting fact is that there's in the Bible, it actually talks about Alexander the Great, and so it's an interesting point of historical connection. It's in the first book of Maccabees. If you don't have that one and you have your 66 books, sorry, you have the wrong Bible. The real Bible has 73 books. But it says this in the first chapter, verse 1. It says, "After Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came from the land of Kittim, had defeated Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, he succeeded him as king. He had previously become king of Greece. He fought many battles, conquered strongholds, and put to death the kings of the earth. He advanced to the ends of the earth and plundered many nations. When the earth became quiet before him, he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. He gathered a very strong army and ruled over countries, nations, and princes, and they became tributary to him. After this he fell sick and perceived that he was dying. So he summoned his most honored officers who had been brought up with him from youth, and divided his kingdom among them while he was still alive. And after Alexander had reigned 12 years, he died." So that's just a really cool biblical connection to the history that we are talking about. It's so fascinating how it's all interlocked. But that is the life of Alexander the Great, and I think there's a really good lesson to, learn in all this. He becomes this king at the age of 19 with a lot to prove, and he does more than just prove that. He's a man of ambition and always, keep fighting and keep going, no matter what. He's basically willing to do anything to achieve his goals, and I think that's a really important lesson that all of us could learn in one way or another. It's probably not feasible for any of us to gather an army to go conquer the world, but we can do a lot. There's so much potential in the human person to do great things. So thank you for following me for this Ancient Greece series. It was a pleasure to do it over the past few weeks, and I hope you guys have a great day. Please like and subscribe for future videos on the channel, and let me know what you think in the comments.